Before language, before scripture, before gods and names, there was number. Every movement of the stars, every vibration of sound, every pattern of growth followed ratio. The ancients felt it long before they proved it. The pulse of existence, that one man gave it language. His name was Pythagoras. Legend says he stood by a blacksmith's forge and noticed something strange. Each hammer produced a different tone depending on its weight and the length of the anvil it struck. He measured, he calculated, he found harmony. He discovered that music, emotion, beauty, order was not magic, it was mathematics. That realization shadowed the world. If sound could be predicted by number, then perhaps everything could. Perhaps the entire universe was a composition written in ratios, and the soul, an instrument tuned to play along. That was the birth of cosmic mathematics of the Pythagoreans. To the uninitiated, Pythagoras was a mathematician. To his students, he was a prophet of proportion. He founded the first mystery school built not on superstition but on harmony. There were no idols, no sacrifices, only numbers. To them, number wasn't quantity, it was quality. Each one symbolized a cosmic principle. One was unity, oneness. Two was polarity. Three was creation. Four was stability. Together, they formed the Tetractys, a triangle of 10 dots representing the structure of all existence. They swore oaths upon it. They believed that understanding its ratios revealed the language of the gods. Pythagoras called reality a lyre of infinite strings. The planets themselves sang through their orbits, a sound he called the music of the spheres. He meant that distances between celestial bodies, the timing of seasons, and the geometry of light were not accidents, but harmonies of single divine composition. That was the Pythagorean secret. The universe is not random, it's rhythmic. To them, chaos didn't exist. It was only harmony too vast for the untrained ear to recognize. When later philosophers like Plato said God geometrizes always, they were echoing Pythagoras. They meant that divine will express itself through measurement, ratio, and law. Mountains rise by mathematical curvature, shells spiral in Fibonacci precision, light bends according to angle and refraction. Even your heartbeat follows a fractal rhythm, order hidden within variation. Mathematics was not human invention, it was human discovery. It was the original scripture written into matter itself. To the Pythagorean, to study geometry was to study God. But the greatest revelation came when they turned their instruments inward. They found that the same proportions governing the cosmos governed the psyche. Virtue was ratio, justice was balance between extremes. Harmony of the body mirrored harmony of the mind. A chaotic soul produced dissonance, a life out of tune. A disciplined soul resonated with the cosmos itself. That's why their schools demanded silence, moderation, and precision in all things. Each act, each thought, each word was measured. Discipline was mathematics applied to behavior. They taught that what happens above happens below in perfect symmetry. The heavens rotate, so does the atom. The tides rise and fall, so do emotions. The moon cycles, so does woman. To live wisely was to live in alignment with these rhythms. Those who broke ratio suffered disorder, mental, physical, or social. Those who obeyed it achieved harmony, immortality, and peace. That law of correspondence became the backbone of every later philosophy, Hermetic, Stoic, even modern physics. But it began here, with the man who measured music, with Pythagoras. The Pythagorean order lived as though number itself was divine. They greeted each sunrise with hymns tuned to mathematical ratios. They fasted to maintain internal harmony. They spoke only when words were necessary to preserve the geometry of silence. They weren't worshippers, they were mathematicians of divinity. Every movement, every breath was a study in rhythm. That's why they were feared. A society built on impulse cannot understand people built on proportion. The untrained called them mystics, the trained called them masters. What terrified the world wasn't their secrecy, it was their precision. They could predict, explain, and align what others called miracles. They could calculate eclipses, tune instruments, and design architecture that outlasted centuries. They proved that knowledge of ratio grants power over reality, because once you understand the pattern, you can participate in it consciously. That was the hidden meaning of the Pythagorean secret. Whoever hears the numbers controls the music. If you've ever felt that beauty hides logic, if you've sensed that symmetry soothes because it speaks your soul's native tongue, if you've found order behind what others call chaos, then you've heard the first note of the Pythagorean symphony. You've glimpsed the truth that the universe is not speaking words, it's speaking numbers. You're a Pythagorean philosopher. You're a Carthusian. Don't waste more time in their systems. You don't belong among placeholders. Join the Carthusians today on Patreon for those ready to hear the music of proportion. The Pythagorean path: study harmony as law, translate chaos into rhythm, Diogenes' barrel, strip illusion until only pattern remains. The Aurelius Council: lead through geometry, build systems that equal the order of the stars. The universe is not silent, it's syncing in sequence. You only need the discipline to listen. Join the Carthusians today on Patreon and develop the discipline to listen to the universe. The untrained see numbers as tools. The Pythagoreans saw them as truths. To count was not to calculate, it was to commune. Every number was a living principle, a tone of creation, a key in the cosmic scale. For them, arithmetic wasn't science, it was theology disguised as symmetry. To the Pythagorean, one was not one thing, it was the source, it was the N, as they called it, unity, origin, seed. The point before extension, silence before sound. Every other number was born from its division. Two symbolized duality, light and dark, male and female, life and death. The first tension, the first echo, the first question in the void. Three represented reconciliation, when unity and duality found balance and creation began. That's why the triangle becomes sacred. It was stability birthed from conflict. Four symbolized matter, the first solid, the square of foundation, and the sum, 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4, equaled 10, the sacred number of completion, the Tetractys. To the modern mind, this looks symbolic. To them, it was structural. They believed the universe itself was built by these ratios, repeating infinitely from atom to star. For the Pythagorean, virtue was geometry applied to character, justice was the square, equal sides, balanced exchanges, proportional outcomes. Temperance was the mean, the midpoint between excess and deficiency. Courage was the triangle, tension held in perfect stability. They lived ethics as mathematics, not morality. Sin was simply disproportion. When one side grew longer than the other, when desire exceeded discipline, when power exceeded wisdom, the soul lost shape. Their goal wasn't goodness for approval, it was harmony for alignment, because harmony alone leads to peace. Pythagoras taught that the human being is an instrument tuned between heaven and earth. The body resonates with the rhythm of planets. The mind vibrates with the laws of number. When emotion overwhelms reason, the strings loosen. When asceticism smooths joy, the strings tighten. Both cause dissonance. both distort harmony. The disciplined soul learns to tune itself daily through diet, silence, thought, and art. This tuning wasn't symbolic, it was literal. They used sound frequencies, breathing patterns, and rhythm to correct imbalance. Their practice later evolved into medicine, music therapy, meditation. Everything in Pythagorean philosophy revolved around the mean, the perfect midpoint between extremes. Pythagoras taught nothing in excess, not as moral scolding, but as mathematical law. The mean is the balancing force that keeps opposites from annihilating each other. Hot meets cold, dry meets wet, action meets stillness, and the world endures. When one side dominates, collapse follows. That's why they measured moderation, not as compromise, but as power, because the universe itself survives by balance. Every natural phenomenon was proof. Lightning followed sequence, waves moved in patterns, planets orbited in measurable ratios. What modern science calls laws of physics, the Pythagoreans called divine mathematics. They believed that behind every element of nature stood a number. Fire was a triangle, symbol of upward energy. Earth, the square, symbol of solidity. Air, the octahedron, light and changeable. Water, the icosahedron, flowing and vast. These shapes, later known as Platonic solids, were sacred geometry, physical matter born from spiritual ratio. But even they met mystery. One day, a student named Hippasus discovered an impossible number, the diagonal of a square. It could not be expressed as ratio. It was infinite, unspeakable, outside harmony. That discovery horrified the order. They called it alogos, without reason. They swore to keep it secret. For it, the universe was number. What did it mean that something could not be numbered? To them, it was proof of divine mystery, perfection allowing a perfection so balanced could exist. The infinite, that number symbolized the apeiron, as they called it, infinity. The irrational became the sacred shadow of proportion, the unknown inside the known. The paradox became the seed of every later philosophy that worshipped both law and transcendence. Temples, music, governments, even friendships, everything built without proportion collapses. Everything aligned with proportion endures. That's why the Pythagoreans treated daily life as architecture. You didn't need to measure stone to live geometrically. You just needed to balance extremes. Wake and rest. Speak and listen. Give and withhold. Each pair forms a numerical rhythm, and the soul becomes an equation in motion. When lived perfectly, existence becomes music, audible to the gods. If symmetry soothes you more than chaos, if you find peace in patterns others ignore, if you've ever felt numbers whisper sense into silence, then you're just not rational, you're remembering, you're hearing the same language the ancients built civilizations from, the same rhythm the stars have been humming since before you were born. You are a Pythagorean, you're a Carthaginian leader. Don't waste more time in their systems. You don't belong among placeholders. Join the Carthaginians today on Patreon for those who want to live by proportion instead of impulse. The Pythagorean path. Study harmony in all things. Make ethics a science of balance. Diogenes' barrel. Simplify until only ratio remains. The Aurelius Council. Govern by symmetry. Make justice measurable again. The universe is counting still. Every atom keeps time. Every breath recites number. To live well is simply to keep tempo with eternity. Join the Carthaginians today on Patreon and begin your Carthaginian journey as a leader.